Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z Martin, and today we are talking about holidays hunter style, the gifts they gave to each other and the gifts the show gave to us. But before we start in on that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Kaela.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kaela Joseph. I go by they and she pronouns, and I am the co-author of Fandom Acts of Kindness, a heroic guide to activism, advocacy, and doing chaotic good with Tanya Cook, and big fan of Supernatural and festive for the holidays today.
And Travis.
Hi, I'm Travis Adams. I am a readjustment counselor. I'm a social worker. I'm a readjustment counselor for veterans struggling with PTSD or issues stemming from the military service. I contribute to a couple series of books with Travis Langley, like psychology or supernatural psychology. And the most recent one is the Spider-Man psychology book.
Very cool. I'm Gail Z Martin. I write epic and urban fantasy, and as Morgan Bryce, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all of my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I contributed a chapter to Lindsay Brunus's There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, and otherwise I'm just an obsessed fan who loves talking about Supernatural. So let's talk, before we dive into some of the gifts in the show, let's talk about gift giving itself. Gift giving has a lot of things packed around it. It can be very positive. It can be kind of toxic if there are strings and conditions. Gifts can be all kinds of things, good and bad. Where do we start when it comes to what gifts mean and how we interpret them? Kaela?
I think one of the things that comes to mind first is a lot of that is culturally dependent, especially if we're talking about holiday gift giving. A lot of that stems from how we grew up, what traditions and customs we grew up with. And I think we'll likely talk about that when we get into Supernatural, and particularly what Sam and Dean's customs were or weren't growing up. And so gift giving takes on the meaning often of what you grew up with.
Okay, Travis?
Yeah, I agree with that. With Kaela, it goes a lot with culture. I also think upbringing too can have a definite impact on that. I mean, even like if you follow like the love languages, like gift giving is a love language for some people. It's how they show their appreciation. And some people, it's like a negative when they receive it. So it does come up from how they were brought up. But also, I think like internally, if they think they're worth it at times, because I think a lot of people don't feel that they're worth other people spending time with or money with, and that comes from various reasons. And I think we'll kind of explore that a little bit using Sam and Dean and maybe some of the other people as well.
Okay. I agree with everything. And one of the other things that I've seen, particularly in dysfunctional families, and the Winchesters are kind of the, example for that, is that gifts can sometimes have a lot of strings attached. This is a gift, but in return, I expect you to behave this way, do this thing, not do this thing, or else I'll withdraw the gift or withdraw my love. Or, I don't want you to go to that college. I'll buy you a car if you go to the college I want you to go to. That sort of thing on bigger and lesser scales can become a real problem with gift giving if the intent behind the gift is manipulative and not pure. And we see a little bit of that in, a lot of that with particularly the angels and the supernatural creatures, but we've seen some of that with John's A+ parenting, and we'll get into all of that. I love what you said, Travis, about people not feeling comfortable to receive a gift. Can you kind of expand on that, maybe within what happens in Supernatural?
Trying to think of like a supernatural example with that one. Hopefully it'll come to me in a second. But I know for some people, it's like that low self-esteem, low self-worth. They don't feel that they're worth other people really investing in. I know people that will show up late to things and they don't realize how disrespectful it is because they minimize their importance to the other people. So it's like, it's just me. It doesn't matter if I'm late. We're like, no, I care about you. I want some time with you. And now we're late for other people too. And I think gift giving can go similarly if we don't think that we're worthy of it. You know, Sam and Dean growing up, they didn't have much. I mean, Dean went and stole gifts, right, to give to Sam, because they didn't have much growing up as kids. So, and that could be kind of where this is going with not receiving gifts as kids that got normalized. And so that when they got to be adults, they didn't really give each other gifts, right? Sam and Dean, even they just like go to the gas station down the street and just buy them like beef jerky and whatever random stuff that they have right there next to the cashier at one point. So I think that's kind of, they don't take a lot of investment because they don't think they're really worth it.
Okay, Kaela?
Well, what came to mind with that piece about not being worthy is actually a little bit different from what you're talking about, which is the gift exchange of the amulet is Sam sort of deciding that John isn't worthy of that gift because of the conditional way that he has shown love and the fact that he's not actually there for Christmas that year. And so I also can't think of because they give each other gifts so rarely in the show, I can't think of an example of somebody not accepting a gift. I can think of many examples of folks not accepting time and affection and other types of sort of informal gifts. But the first thing that came to mind of the sort of not worthy is Sam deciding that John was not worthy of the amulet and to give that to Dean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are many kinds of gifts and they don't all have to be tangible. In fact, in the show, for many reasons, most of them aren't. And we've got plenty of room to talk about that. Coming back to the convenience store thing, because certainly in the big gift giving episode, by supernatural standards, very supernatural Christmas, Sam gives Dean a candy bar and a bottle of motor oil, and Dean gives him skin mags and shaving cream. Very practical gifts. But I wonder, you talk about getting beef jerky or whatever it is at the convenience store. I saw a meme one time on Facebook that said that any road trip requires you to act like a 9-year-old with $100 to spend for road snacks. Sam and Dean probably didn't have road snacks. They probably couldn't talk John into those M&Ms at the counter or that beef jerky. It was frivolous, too expensive. So maybe when you grow up without even that, when that seems out of reach, having somebody buy you the big bag of peanut M&Ms is a love gesture because it wasn't common. So it may even be that those very little things, like when they come back, they stop to refuel, somebody goes in and gets coffee and stuff, Dean slings it, basically throws it at Sam in the front seat. That might be an I love you jerk, because John probably didn't have time for that. He probably didn't even bother to stop at gas stations with bathrooms. There are bushes outside, boys, get to it. I can just see that of John. I'm not a huge fan. So I sometimes even the littlest things mean something. What other gifts come to mind? Kaela? We'll start with tangible and then we'll get into the intangible because there's all kinds of good stuff.
Well, the example that you just gave of the Christmas gift exchange, Sam even entertaining the idea of Christmas and celebrating Christmas with Dean was a gift. Gift giving there, I think, Dean really wanted to celebrate, and Sam has always been the one to be like, no, I'm not really into the holidays. Dean really wanted to, and so Sam changing his mind and actually putting together the whole, there's the eggnog and there's the tree, and yeah, it's what was available to them. It's not a lot by what most of us would consider sort of the standard of Christmas. It's certainly not what they had just been at the big house that had the giant tree and all of the trimmings and all of that, but it's still their version of Christmas, and it's still their version of gift giving. Random quick aside, if you ever try to replicate that tree, the practicality of that many little air fresheners on a tree does not actually work in real life. I tried to replicate that tree once, and it turns out that it smells terrible. So fun little prop thing from that episode.
I bought a bunch of the the tree air fresheners, and I used a marker to do the SWDW on them.
Mhm.
You're right. Even in the plastic, more than one of them is overwhelming.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being
Terrible.
trapped in a car with one of them, let alone a room with tree full. You wouldn't be able to breathe. But it's a
I had
nice
to put the tree outside.
yeah. Travis?
Well, and like when Kayla was talking about with just the holidays, and I know this is more of a gift giving than a holiday episode, but it made me think about when they had that maid come in the 15th season, and they got to do all the holidays and how excited the boys were because they did get robbed of that opportunity as a kid, and just like how excited Dean was specifically to be able to have those, I thought was really cool. Um, the gift that comes to mind right now is like the quid pro quo one of Bobby telling the boys they need to talk to Rufus, but they got to bring a bottle of booze with them because you're not going to get anywhere without that bottle. So like, hey, I'm giving you something in return of something, kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning with the introduction, and that's the one that really stands out to me for like a tangible asset. Um, and it again, it shows that like, hey, I'm doing something in order to get something for myself. It's not just to be altruistic.
Yeah. And going back to the very supernatural Christmas episode, when the neighbor brings the fruitcake over to the gods, the pagan gods, and then as soon as the door is shut, he drops it on the floor and steps on it very intentionally. And that is such a clear visual indication that they are playing a role that they are nothing like what they have gotten people to think of them, and that this is not going to go well. In addition to everything else we've seen, so I thought that transaction was also interesting. But you're right, Travis. In that case, what you were mentioning is very transactional. It is not a pure gift from the heart. It's I want something back for this. Another type of gift that I can think of is all the times that Dean cooks for Sam. Dean, jokes about, hush, I'm nesting. Here, eat your burger. But food is a big gift for Dean. Maybe because they didn't have enough growing up, but he's always trying to get Sammy to eat, whether they're kids and it's the last of the Lucky Charms, whether it's, making him eat a burger, bringing him food after the trials. Food is love to Dean. And that's why I think he's so crushed when he finds out that Mary didn't actually cook anything that he remembered as a kid. He thought that was love, and it was just from the Piggly Wiggly. And that really hurts. Back to you, Kaela.
Well, and interestingly, there's multiple times in the later seasons where he also puts food in front of Cass, even though Cass presumably does not need to eat. There's still that gift giving. The other gift that comes to mind is, we were talking about this idea of being robbed of childhood. And one of the first things that Cass does when he reunites with Claire is he goes to their version of Hot Topic and gets that little grumpy cat stuffed toy. And it's a similar gesture of like, I'm sorry for messing up your childhood.
Travis?
I agree that Dean does do a lot of food, and I think that that's kind of his love language because that's how he remembers as a kid getting from Mary, whether it's cutting the crust off the sandwiches, right? Having the meatloaf that was bought from Piggly Wiggly, pie, her having pie for him. And I think this is one of the issues with love languages and why I work with it with my clients is like, that's not Sam's. Sam's isn't food. He'll like, even when he asked Dean, like, hey, is this real bacon or turkey bacon? It's like, oh, it's turkey. And then he eats, he's like, this is real, you lied. Like, Sam tries to eat clean, but Dean doesn't care. When the Leviathans are going and like Bobby and Sam are grossed out by Dean's burger, and then they look at it and it's just like, it's sick. Dean is a foodie. He's all about food. He's constantly eating. I've been doing some rewatches lately, and he's always just snacking on something in the background or doing something, and that's not Sam's style. So the love language is kind of disconnected because he doesn't understand that although he receives it that way, and that's how he wants to give love, that's not how it's received by Sam. And I think that's very common with gifts. If somebody loves giving gifts but hates receiving them, they might receive a different way. And really understanding, like, how do I need to show this person that I care about them because it is different. For Sam, it really comes down to me is like when Dean opens up, when Dean is like very, very vulnerable with what he's telling him. Hey, I'm hurting because of this. Hey, I can't live without you. I sold my soul to make sure you would live. Those are the things that Sam really truly values and shows that he's cared for by Dean. He doesn't care about the food, but Dean loves showing through food because I think of his upbringing, where Sam was 6 months old when his mom died.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that Sam recognizes and wants the trust. That trust is such a big thing between them the whole way through the series. And anytime Dean shows that he trusts Sam enough to be vulnerable, you can just see Sam light up with, oh my God, you really trust me. This is, oh, I can't believe it. It means so much to him. And they get a little better on that sort of thing as the seasons go on. But yeah, that's definitely something that they are not in sync with at the beginning of the show. Other types of gifts, and you mentioned Cass and always feeding Cass. There's also that scene where Cass shows up with the sandwiches and says, "Please accept these sandwiches as a gesture of solidarity." This is from a being that doesn't need to eat, creating sandwiches for people. And that's just such a, I don't really get this whole human thing, but I'm trying. Which is, trying to meet people where they are, because certainly there aren't really, it's also alien to his background. Back to you, Kaela.
The idea of love languages and the sort of missed connections in those love languages makes me think of all of the times that self-sacrifice is used as a gift or intended as a gift. And in particular, thinking about the season where Gadriel appears, and there's this sort of assumption in some ways from Dean that, like, sure, Sam's going to be upset. He's not going to want to have an angel possessing him that he doesn't know about. That's why Dean keeps it a secret. But there's this sort of understanding that Dean has of, oh, I've done this for you, that Sam very clearly comes back to him and says, no, you did this for you. You actually did not do this for me. And that's, you mentioned that they get better about this in later seasons. And that's sort of one of the starts of them getting better about that, is the acknowledgement that the self-sacrifice and the not taking Sam's opinion into consideration are not what Sam wants. Sam wants to be trusted. Sam wants to be cared for, but he doesn't want Dean to sacrifice himself, and he doesn't want Dean to make decisions for him.
And Dean really doesn't truly understand why Sam was mad until he's been possessed himself by Michael. Yeah. And then he gets it, and you can see that he gets it. Yeah. Travis.
I was trying to piece together something that was, it was more of like the villainy, like the villains, like the Lucifer, the Crowleys and stuff like that, and how, like, when people want to make them happy, they bring them a person, like somebody they're looking for. They give them some form of control, and show it. One, it shows their value, like, hey, I took care of this for you, and two, love me for it, appreciate me for it, and it's to give them control. And sometimes that would backfire. It's like, oh, I didn't want that. I want to do that. I want to be the person that gets that. And I was trying to think of like the exact example, and it's just like escaping me right now. But I feel like it was with Crowley early on with him, one of his people bringing him somebody, and he was actually more upset with that. I just can't think of the episode right now, but that I was kind of thinking about like the darker characters and it being more of a power and control thing over like a love and gesture thing.
Well, and for what you said, Kayla, about the no, you did it for you, it's kind of like when, you have a husband who buys his wife a 1 year weight loss program that she didn't ask for, but he's just said he thinks she needs to lose weight. And so it's a backhanded gift that isn't really for her. It's to make her into something that he wants. And so, yeah, we definitely have some of that cluelessness. But in a way, Sam does it when he thinks that his absence is a gift. Dean will be better off without me. Dean, all I do is mess things up. Everybody would be better off without me. I should just run away, and then none of the doom and destruction that's going to fall on me is going to hurt anybody else. So in that sense, he's imagining that the world and everybody around him would be better off if he gave them the gift of his absence, which also is not true and is a distortion. So yeah, he and Dean have a lot of ground to cover here. One of the other gifts that comes to mind is the gift of the dinner they got together in Lebanon. That gift of a family meal, and apparently some photographs, given the one that's over Sam's mantle in the last episode. They took time to take photos. That was a tremendous gift for Sam and Dean. We don't ever find out how much Mary really appreciated it, but Sam and Dean got a lot of closure out of that gift. Thoughts on that? Kaela?
I was just thinking there, I'm pretty sure that is the one time that we do see Mary cook as well, that it's still a kind of typical Midwestern meal, but doesn't she cook a casserole in that?
Probably Winchester surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a great casserole, but it did sound like the one time that she does have that gift giving around food. And even though it's not quite the way that Dean remembers, it's what's accessible to her with the resources that she has, because she also didn't have that kind of life growing up, as we later find out. She also was raised as a hunter and did not have, the very Merry Christmases and Thanksgivings and things like that. I think Lebanon is very much that closure, and it is a little bit of closure for her as well, because she came back, one of the first things that she was asking about was John. And so to have that moment with him, and he even gets a little bit of closure to see that they have grown up into these remarkable men. She has come back. We don't really get to let him keep that closure because his memory is wiped when he wakes up, but he does get sort of a moment there.
Travis?
Yeah, I think that like there again, like if we go back to like that love language and like how I give and receive love, quality time. And that's what the boys always wanted. They always wanted a family, and then even when Dean gets the family, it's not enough. It's not good enough. And that's when Sam's keeping himself away because he's like, Dean has everything he wants. I'll stay away. But both of them aren't happy. Sam is soulless, so that doesn't help anybody. Um, and I think in that episode specifically, looking at them, I do think like although they don't verbalize it, there's a lot of body language. And when we think about communication, body language is 55% of the message we're receiving, right? Tone is 38, and then the words are 7. So you don't need the words as much as the body language, the happiness. You see it in Mary's eyes, you see it in John's eyes, you see how proud he is, you see the tear from pride in there, and that's what gives the boys like a lot of meaning, and that's probably the best they've ever felt, besides when Cass heals them because he's healing everything, but that's the best they've ever felt because they finally get what they've searched for their whole life, and that's that family dynamic that they've always wanted. So that was the best gift I think that the writers and the showrunners ever gave the boys for their 300th episode, is having that, especially where all 4 of them are back together.
Well, and thinking about holidays and special days, Dean fantasizes about Lisa throwing him a picnic for his birthday. Sam gets to celebrate his birthday with Amelia. This is a big thing. They didn't get birthday cakes from Dairy Queen when they were with John. They, maybe Dean stole them a cupcake or a cookie, but, they're stick a candle in a piece of pie at the diner, but they didn't get much. And so this was obviously a fantasy. And yet when they got it, it wasn't from the other brother. So it really wasn't the gift they actually thought they wanted. They didn't get the acknowledgement or the celebration with the person who meant the most to them. And I think that's also interesting, is the idea of getting a gift you want, but if it doesn't come from the right person, if it isn't given in the right way, it loses a lot of what should be a good thing with it. Speaking about food, what that wonderful scene when Sam and Dean are eating dinner with Jody and the girls, and Dean is just going on and on. You eat like this every night, Dean? It's just chicken. Oh my God, this is so good. Jody's just putting food on the table for a weeknight dinner. For Sam and Dean, this is so good. And that whole normality of that, including the fight over dinner with teenagers, is just a slice of real life that is a gift in a way to them that they never really otherwise got a chance to experience. And Jody gives that kind of thing very freely. Donna mostly gives donuts, but Jody gives that kind of thing. Before we talk about the gifts the show and the cast and the fandom have given to us, any other thoughts of gifts in the show? Because I think, for looking at this going, what are we going to talk about? We've found a lot of stuff. Kaela?
Just that when you mentioned Jody, one of the things that she gives as a gift is physical comfort as well. And one of the love languages that we haven't talked about with Dean so far is how he responds to physical touch. There's a lot of leaning into that he does. And I can't remember what episode this is from, but I saw a screen grab the other day of Jody just like putting a hand on him. And rather than pushing away or staying stoic, he just grabs her wrist like a, yes, I want this. That there's a lot of little moments like that throughout the show. In fact, that's how in the later seasons, how Sam identifies that something is wrong and that they find out about the Malik box, is that is something that Dean does, but it's something that Dean does only when something really big is happening.
And if you think about it, and this is Jensen and Jared bringing a wonderful dimension to Sam and Dean, how often they're in each other's physical space. They're bumping shoulders, they're bumping elbows, they're closer than most adults are to each other. And part of that is living in a car, part of that is living in these tiny little hotel rooms, but I think part of it is also Dean needing to constantly reassure himself that Sammy's there. Mm-hmm. Sammy's there. I'm going to bump his elbow. Sammy's there. And it's probably unconscious, but it's that I need to reassure myself that you're really there. And whether Sam accepts it or tolerates it, he seems to appreciate it most of the time as well. Travis, any other thoughts about gifts?
Yeah, I think that just like the playful banter they have to let them know that they live in a very serious world, and they still find time to have fun, right? When they're pranking each other and they keep escalating it. They laugh a lot, and I think that's a gift too. Is in the moments of severe pressure and stress, they find the humor in it. And there's studies that show people with trauma find humor in some of the darkest places, but it's because it still brings levity to their life. I know that's what it's like in the Marine Corps for me, and working with my veterans now. They laugh and they find connection in dark places. I've had a few of my clients watch this show for various reasons. Like, I'll watch an episode or two, and they watch all 327 because it's just it's so grabbing for so many different areas of people's lives, and the humor and relationships and so much. But I think the humor part really I love too. And you see that with Charlie, you see it with Rowena, you see it with Crowley. Dean is just humorous throughout the whole time. Sam has his serious moments, and then he has his playful moments, and I think all that stuff is part of it. I love Lucifer's playfulness. I love how he just messes with Sam. Those type of things, they're gifts to me. Is
Mhm.
how I see that one.
Well, and the other gifts that I thought of it when they were plotting how to kill Chuck, aka God, and Jack was willing to be the bomb to kill him. And Dean takes him out. He lets him drive the Impala. Which is also a gift on the times he lets Sam drive when Dean's not just too wrecked to drive. Um, Here, I believe you're an equal. You can drive, baby. But he lets him drive the car. They go fishing. That day was a gift from Dean to Sam, despite all the other mess around the whole situation and Dean's conflicted emotions. He didn't have to do that. That was kind of a waste of time, but he did it, and that was a form of gift, and maybe that was also Dean looking for absolution, or um, also saying he was sorry that I'm all in favor of you killing yourself, but it was still a form of gift. Now, 327 episodes, 15 seasons. Show's been, wrapped up since 2020. We're still here talking about it. What are some of the gifts the show and the fandom and the cast have given to us as fans? Kaela?
Well, for me, quite literally being able to develop a different relationship with Christmas specifically. So I have always had a very complicated history with Christmas and not really sure if I wanted to celebrate Christmas, and had some significant life changes in the last year or so that I really had the opportunity as an adult to sit down and go, well, do I want to celebrate this holiday or not? And my first reaction was to have a very bah humbug, absolutely not. I do not want to touch this holiday. I hate this holiday. And then I found myself kind of humming some Christmas music in a plant store one weekend and thought, well, there's a couple things that I haven't gotten rid of from the stash of like obligatory Christmas things. One was the Castiel stocking that I have hanging behind me. The other I brought out as well were these two Christmas bulbs. They're the only two Christmas bulbs I kept from a large tree that I used to have back when I lived in Idaho. And I thought to myself, well, I want to just try and see if this is something that I enjoy. And if I start from something else I know that I enjoy, which is supernatural, which is why I kept those things, I wonder if I'll still like Christmas. Turns out I love Christmas. I don't love the like giant tree in my current very small apartment, which is why I tried to recreate that tiny gas station Christmas tree. But it really was this opportunity through something else that I love to say, oh, I do love this. I don't love all the things I used to associate with it. I don't love the obligation of it. I don't love the people I associate with this anymore. But I do love it. I do love Christmas. And so for me, there's a very tangible, like, this gave me Christmas back.
Very cool. Travis?
Yeah, I know a lot of people that'll put like a theme tree to things they love because it's a good way to celebrate it. um I think that like the gift that really the show gives us is comfort in various ways. If you're feeling down, for me, when I'm low, there's a few episodes, French Mistake, Just My Imagination, The Mystery Spot, that I can put on and I'll laugh. And I know what's going to happen. I can quote the episode and I still watch it because it's so comforting to be with, those parasocial relationships that I get from hanging out with the boys. Um, those things. I mean, Dr. Lynn Zabernis, her book with like Family Don't End in Blood, the whole book is filled with gifts that the actors got, that the fans got, that everybody gets from the show, the relationships and everything. So I think that like those are the gifts that I took from the show. I remember I didn't watch it when it first came out. It was already on the air for a while before I was notified of it and told like, hey, you should watch this show. And it just hooked me from that first episode. And I binged everything, and I caught up, and and then having to wait for episodes as they came out on the air. I was like, man, this is terrible. I'm glad I got to watch so many seasons first, because it was so good. And the reason why is because of the writing, the connection, the people, the jokes, the trueness. Even in a world full of supernatural beings, the trueness of the characters.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the show is a comfort watch, which is a little crazy considering it started off as a horror show and there's a lot of disquieting stuff that happens. But in the end, it's okay. And I think that's what we need in a crazy upside down world that's a dumpster fire. We need to know that it's going to be okay. And that maybe if the Winchesters were here, they could fix it. I know that the show and the watching it in connection with doing some of the Netflix watch parties and all that definitely helped me get through lockdown and pandemic, because there was a community and we could watch the same episode we had seen 30 times, but we were watching it together and we were experiencing it together. And I think that is a huge thing, is the dopamine hit of watching those favorite shows, that really has been documented that it gives you the good brain chemicals to repeat something that you enjoy. I think for me, on a bigger level, and I wrote about this in my chapter in There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, the show in some odd ways struck some closure for me on some big issues. And I didn't expect to find that in a network TV show. But I realized down the pike, oh yeah, this is why this resonates quite so much with me. And so that is a gift there. What about the fandom? You know, I'm heading to a convention, a supernatural convention this weekend, and the Facebook groups about the conventions are all full of this buzz on, well, I'm going to bring these little things to share and give out. I'm in this seat, come see me, and I'm going to bring this. And there's this tremendous generosity in the supernatural fandom that I've never seen in any other fandom that I've been part of. Kaela? Oh, you're muted.
It's a lot of what Tanya and I talk about in our book, actually, is the generosity of fandoms. And we talk a lot about the supernatural fandom specifically around that and all of the amazing activism that people do, but also things like a fan gifting another fan an organ. Like, when you say it is a truly unique experience in this fandom, it is a truly unique experience in this fandom. There's not a lot of people I know who would give an organ to a stranger. When I think about the fandom as well, there's this ability to connect through fandom, especially at conventions, that I just don't see in other social spaces. There's this like ability to meet somebody and already know so much about them because there's this shared set of values, this shared set of interests, that it's almost like you skip several years of friendship building and just jump right into like somewhere between year 3 to 5 sometimes with folks, where it's like, oh, I know you, I trust you, I'll share a room with you even though I don't know you, and be able to share those resources to do things like conventions. That's, I think, just really special that exists in this space.
Mm-hmm. Travis?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I love conventions in general, Comic-Con, WonderCon. I did a Supernatural one a few few weeks ago, and it was just so much fun. Just the interactions and the love shared by everybody in that room for a TV show that has been on the air for 3 years. You know, just that alone. And there is a strong connection, and I work with people and they feel that they can't relate to other people, that people don't get them. I mean, that's just the nature of beasts when you work in trauma. And on my wall, I have some of the books I've contributed to, and two of them being supernatural psychology books. And I'm working with this active duty Marine that's been through a lot of trauma. And he's like, supernatural, huh? And then he pulls his shirt down and he has the tattoo. And boom, instantly I have rapport with the guy. We can chat about supernatural for a few minutes, and then what I say holds more weight because we're able to relate on a commonality. And I think that those little tiny things go so far for us when we feel so disconnected, when we feel like we're isolated and alone. And that's what conventions bring to me in general, whether it be Comic-Con or, a horror con or something like that. It's a shared understanding, a shared foundation that we can build upon. Kind of like Kaela said, we're skipping time because we already know that we share this at least.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found with the conventions, and sometimes the gift you get is not the one you thought you needed, but it is what you needed. The first Supernatural convention I went to, and I'd been to a bunch of Comic Cons and genre cons and other things, I expected that the actors would get up there and talk about their new project, and it would all be kind of pretty PR scripted. And no, they got up there and take 100% questions from the audience. They talk about their kids and their dogs and their beer company and random stuff. The time Jared stopped all the trains in Europe, they tell stories on themselves and each other. And while all of us are, keep something of ourselves back in our public persona, I was amazed at how much of themselves they shared with the audience compared to normal interactions, fans and celebrities. How accessible they allowed themselves to be and what they gifted us with as a measure of that trust. And, some of these people have been going to these conventions for 15 years, all of the conventions a year, which can be 10 or 12. So I know this is still parasocial, but it's still parasocial. And didn't I just see you in Denver last month? There's a recognition. And I think that is a gift from them to the fandom built over those years of trust, especially when you see things like Jensen, when he first sang at a con and he told everybody to be quiet because he was going to shut his eyes and pretend he was just singing to his daughter and they weren't there. And now we see Mr. Rockstar Ackles out there, just strutting his stuff. That's a gift we gave to them, was that safe space. And you see how Brianna and some of these other folks have kind of really come into their own on this safe stage where they know we love them and they know we'll support them moving into this new area that is risky. They're people like everybody else. That's taking a risk in front of us, and they trust us enough to give that to them. So that's a really interesting thing that as fans, you don't usually get to give something of that magnitude back to the people who gave you the show. What about things like fan fiction and fan art and all the fan podcasts? There's so much supernatural content out there. How's that factor into the gift giving? Kaela?
Well, thinking of fanfic specifically, there's a whole fanfic gift exchange that happens. One of the things that you'll see, especially around the holidays, is this was literally gifted from this user on AO3 to this other user on AO3. And there are whole forums set up to do some of those gift exchanges in sort of a Secret Santa kind of way. And so there's a lot of ways that fans will use things like that, sometimes as a commodity as well. Like, I'll trade you my thing for your thing that you do. There are all sorts of things that, like you had mentioned, get given to the actors as well. And I think with those parasocial relationships in particular, it's so interesting because they are parasocial relationships. And often when people talk about parasocial relationships, people talk about, well, it's a completely one-sided relationship. And that's not true in modern fandom, where we have the advent of social media and the ability to talk with folks at conventions, talk with folks over social media. We have things like Gishwiz where we're potentially interacting with folks. And so it is still parasocial. It still is more one-sided than not. But there is this way that the fandom interacts with one another, interacts with the celebrities interact with one another and interact with the fans, that it does feel different than what we typically talk about when we talk about parasocial relationships.
Mm-hmm. Travis?
Yeah, I think that even at the Supernatural Con I went to, that there was an art area to do stuff, and board games and ways to connect, and ways to connect with the show, ways to enjoy kind of trying to draw or paint a scene and seeing everybody else's. Fanfic is everywhere, especially with this show. I think that there's for anything you want, there's probably a story or 10 about it. And kind of when Kayla was talking, I thought about Misha posting so much on social media lately, like, hey, going through my garage, found all these things, I'll sign them and send them to you. Just send me a text at this number. So it does go both ways. Yes, not in the same amount or quantity, but in quality. The quality is there. And I mean, even when I was at the Supernatural Con, Jared was running out to go catch a flight with his family, and he's like, "Hey, Jensen gave me this shirt, and I want to sign it and auction it off. And whoever else wants to sign it, please feel free. And Misha gets to pick the charity." So they get this community gives back. So he takes his shirt off, signs it. Misha comes out, signs it, and they're gonna have a bunch of other actors sign it just to help give more money to charities. This community gives so much back because we get so much from each other because we are stronger together.
Yeah, I know if you go out on AO3 and you just look for supernatural fanfic, you'll find more than 250,000 stories. And that's just on AO3. That's not on LiveJournal and Tumblr and fanfiction.net and all the other sites. And if you go out on YouTube, there are so many hundreds of fan videos, particularly like YouTube videos. And I do a thing in the Supernatural Facebook group that I run where every Friday morning we have a watch together party and we watch a playlist I put together of these. And I'm constantly blown away, not only at the talent of some of these people who are putting these music videos together, but the amount of time it had to take to get the clips and do the edits. And this is a professional level of editing for something given away for free on YouTube out of the love of a show. And not even as necessarily part of a portfolio to say, hey, hire me. Just, I love this show. I want to give this to you. And that is so wonderful to see. And the hours and hours of commentary on the show and the dozens, if not hundreds of podcasts on the show. We've done over 165 episodes right here in Continual on Supernatural. But the content generated by people who just can't stop talking about the show. And I want to share it with you because I love this. And that is a wonderful thing to give and receive because it makes us happy. Any other thoughts on the gift giving, either in the show itself or in the fandom before we wrap up, Kaela?
Just that there is something really special about this fandom as a sort of legacy fandom. There's not everything becomes a legacy fandom that lives past its origins. And we were talking about the recent convention in San Francisco, and one of the things that was really striking, I also happened to be there. One of the things that was really striking was how many of those fans were new fans, had just started watching since the pandemic. So after the show had already ended, picked up the show. There's not a lot of properties that do that. And so there, I think, is also this way that the fandom and the show and everyone involved with it continue to give that gift and continue to give it in different ways. Because I think the fandom that we saw that kind of came up with the show is very different in some ways from the fandom that we're seeing who just picked it up during the pandemic, and in ways that are really, I think, still yet to be seen what that's all going to look like and how this fandom is going to grow and shape over time. But it seems to be a gift that keeps on giving in a way that I don't know that anyone would have anticipated when the show started.
Yeah, Lynn calls it the little show that has just consistently defied expectations over its entire lifespan. Travis?
Yeah, I really like the gift that keeps giving. I felt honored when it was brought into my life, and I've passed it on to so many people because it's just something that's so wonderful about the show, and what it means to each of us and what we take away from it. I just love that. I love the respect the community gives for the most part too. I think that no matter where you go, my friends like to say it's a rule of thirds, or in the Marine Corps, it was like there's always that 10% that ruins it for the 90. And I think there's always some bad apples no matter where you're at, but I find a lot less of them in the supernatural fandom than I have in like other fandoms or in other communities in general, especially how large the percentage wise is much less.
Well, I agree completely because it's the stories, it's the mythology, and it's the people ultimately. The cast, the fans, the people, the friendships we make through this. I've made I've made connections with people that I now count as some of my best friends through the show that I didn't have any reason to know before that. And now we're besties. That's such a treasure. Well, before we wrap up, let's give everybody a chance to know where they can find you online and tell us again about those wonderful books. Kaela?
So you can find me at AK Nerd Fighting along with Tanya Cook. And again, book is Fandom Acts of Kindness. And you can read and hear all of the fantastic gifts that fans, supernatural and otherwise, give to their communities. And that book also was a little bit of a gift from the fandom to me in a way. It was fandom through supernatural is what connected Tanya and I, and we were able to put together that project. So Fandom Acts of Kindness and AK Nerd Fighting at Twitter.
Awesome. Travis?
But yeah, I love doing panels like these. I appreciate any time I can chat about the show. I contributed with Dr. Lindsay Burness for her book for On the Boys with Soups Ain't Always Heroes, comes out in October, where Jim Beaver and Jensen both get to add some of it to them. Lynn's books are always wonderful. The Psych Geeks books. I'm just very fortunate and lucky to kind of be in this world.
And you can find my chapter in Lynn's book, There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, which is about the legacy of the show. Otherwise, I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. Spell them right, and you'll find me on all the social media. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, and I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog, but most of the time, you can find me here on Continual. So thank you both so much for being here, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon, so we'll see you online.